Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the true crime of Lauren Agee. The information I've gathered is being collated from the internet. I mean, no disrespect to anyone I speak about today, and this video is made for educational purposes. Lauren Agee was a 21-year-old girl that lived in Henderson, Tennessee. She lived with her mother, Sherry Smith, and her stepfather, Michael Smith, along with her sisters and brothers who, by all accounts, she was very close to. Lauren was described as full of life. She was always dancing, singing, bubbly person, and her mum described her as she was able to light up any room she walks into. Lauren was full of life. She had a new boyfriend, which seemed like it was going really well between them two. I've even seen him described as being the one for Lauren. She was also studying criminology, so it seemed like she had a really bright future. This all changed, however, in July 2015. So at the beginning of July in 2015, Lauren told her mother Sherry that her and her friend Hannah Palmer were going to a festival called Wakefest. This festival was a wakeboarding and water sports festival where you would participate in all of those things, as well as partying all night and getting drunk, like festivals usually are, basically. It was located at Center Hill Lake in Smallville, and it was a weekend festival. Like I said, you'd do the sports during the day and then party all night. Hannah was not the most reliable friend to Lauren, in the sense that Hannah would only contact Lauren when she was bored. Otherwise, she'd not really bother with her. She was more interested in alcohol and boys by all accounts. Obviously, Lauren was 21, so despite Sherry's concerns and her bad feeling, obviously, like I said, Hannah wasn't the bestest of friends for Lauren. She wasn't the most reliable person. But despite this, they decided to go anyway. They would travel over on the Friday and stay over the weekend, and then on the Sunday they would return. Sherry gave Lauren one last hug before she left and told her to be careful. And the fateful events that followed would mean that Lauren would never return home on the Sunday, and that would be the last time Sherry saw her daughter alive. It was Friday the 24th of July 2015 when the girls set off to the festival. They were posting all over social media photos, statuses of how excited they were. And when they arrived, they actually met up with two guys. One was Aaron Lilly and the other was Christopher Stout. And Aaron Lilly was actually Hannah's new boyfriend. They spent the day hanging out at the bar, watching the water sports, even cliff diving. Now, the regulations of the festival seem to be quite lax. For example, with the cliff diving, when you looked over, you could see rocks. So obviously people would jump over them and try and avoid them with their jump. However, when the waves actually came in, they would cover some of the rocks lower down, and obviously you wouldn't be able to see them. Everyone made their dives, and when it got to Lauren's turn, she jumped over and the wave retracted and she saw a rock that she hadn't seen before. So obviously by this point it was too late. Lauren landed in the water and hit her head, the back of her head, on one of these rocks. She seemed a little dazed and possibly a little concussed for a while. Her friends have stated that Lauren seemed and acted fine after the bump to her head, and they continued to party and drink until around 2 a.m. when they decided to retire to bed. This is when Lauren found out that the sleeping arrangements had changed. So Lauren thought and had told her mother that they were going to be staying in a cabin, and now the four of them were stating that actually they were going to camp out on this cliffside. It seemed that Lauren was definitely not okay with this arrangement. She searched around the bars to see whether there were anywhere else she could stay, and she actually came across an old friend from high school. This was Cassie Franks. She asked Cassie if she was able to stay in her cabin with her, but Cassie told her that it was full. There was no room for her, unfortunately. And it would seem that Cassie had also stayed in this camping area previously, because Cassie had been to this festival before. She'd gone a few years in a row, and she'd actually camped out in this area before, and she said that it was the most unsafe she'd ever felt, and she would never ever camp there again. From now on, she would hire a cabin, which she did. I have found that Cassie, like I said, did say that Lauren was not aware that she was meeting up with this guys, or the fact that they were going to be camping out. I cannot confirm how true this actually is, because maybe she was hiding this fact from her mother, obviously didn't want her to worry, but it did seem like this was true because she'd not really brought anything for camping. So the only items she had with her were her sleeping bag, a change of clothes, her phone, and what might her footwear have been, would you ask? Well, flip-flops. Now, obviously, I don't think that flip-flops are an appropriate footwear for camping over a cliffside. You would think that they would bring a set of boots, which obviously supports the fact that Lauren was not aware that they were going camping. Now, I don't think flip-flops are a very good choice of footwear for camping, do you? The cliffside that they were camping on was not actually owned by the festival, so they basically took no responsibility for it because it was not their land. The festival provided the cabins, etc. that you could hire. It was typical for this campsite to be used every year. They were aware of that, but there were no signs, no railings, no anything, because again, it wasn't actually theirs. They didn't own it. Even though, in my opinion, they knew that people used this space all the time. Maybe they could have put up some signs or some safety things to try and make people aware how dangerous this could have been. So on one side of this cliff, there was a 45-foot drop, and on the other, a 90-foot drop. And the only way to access this spot was to go in a canoe, cross the river. You would then have to scale up the 90-foot steep hill, which was covered with falling rocks, debris. The earth would give way as you were trying to climb it. It was so steep and so dangerous. Even when Lauren was there was actually a rope tied up to actually haul yourself up. However, initially that rope was not there. So people who went to the festival actually climbed up and tied this rope and left it there for people to be able to get up it easier. So think of how dangerous it would have been when this rope wasn't there. But fortunately this rope was there and it allowed you to haul yourself up. So like I said, they had to ascend past corrupt falling rocks and the earth crumbling beneath their feet just to get to where they were sleeping. And don't forget, they were partying, they were really drunk. So trying to scale this when you are potentially wasted would be even more dangerous. And this was just to get to where they were sleeping. Now, I do know that to thrill seekers out there, this probably would have been riveting. But personally, I would definitely not be clambering up, probably drunk, the side of a very steep incline that had debris falling down, the earth giving way beneath you, just to camp above a 90-foot drop. Obviously, that's my opinion. I'm not the kind of person who would find that thrilling, but I do know that lots of people would. It seems there were only two ways to get down, so you could transverse down that really steep incline again, clinging to the rope, or the only other way down was to actually cliff dive from the top, which either way is very dangerous. Despite all these dangerous obstacles, as well as being intoxicated, the four actually made it to the campsite where they set up the tent. The tent was actually for Hannah and Aaron, which meant that Lauren would have to share the hammock with Chris. Now this hammock was suspended above the 90-foot drop. It had straps between two trees and it hung over. Now this is madness to me. Like I said, I wouldn't be camping up there in the first place, but then to stay in a hammock that's anchored between two trees over the 90-foot drop. What if one of those straps were to break? You would be sent over the cliff's edge, no doubt. Some people at the festival did report seeing Lauren arguing with her friends. Now apparently Lauren that night had wanted to go home. Rather than spend the night in the hammock with a guy that she barely knew, she wanted to drive herself home. Her friends apparently had taken her keys off her to stop her. Now they said this was due to her not drink driving and for her own safety, and that there was no malice intended in it whatsoever. Other people have stated, however, that Lauren did want to go home because the trio were being nasty to her. So this could have actually been the reason why they took the keys off her, to mess with her head and be cruel. But again, this is just speculation and I don't know which one is the truth. Either way, she did end up sleeping in this hammock with Chris that night. The fact that the pair did sleep in the same hammock has actually confused people looking into this case, because again, Lauren had a boyfriend she was super happy with. She barely knew Chris, and from what I could find, showed no interest in him whatsoever. So why she would just accept and sleep in the hammock with him, who knows. Anyway, the four of them go to sleep, and in the morning, Lauren is nowhere to be seen. Her friends reportedly thought that Lauren had possibly gone down to the bar or to the festival. Maybe she'd not wanted to wake them up, and she carried about a day without them. Now, the only problem with this is that Lauren left everything behind. Her phone, her shoes, and her other belongings were all still by the hammock. Now, who would actually leave without putting the shoes on? I mean, you can't go down that cliff without wearing shoes. She would have basically needed her shoes regardless. Her friends attended a few different water sports and bars, but they didn't see Lauren anywhere. They also came across Cassie and asked her if she had seen Lauren by any chance, to which she replied that she had not. They did not report Lauren as missing. Now, at around 4:45 p.m, on the 26th of July, a fisherman and his son took a boat out in the lake and came across something in the water. They saw something pink floating in the water and went over to find out what it was. And what they found was a body. Lauren Agee's body had been found floating in the water. The pair did not tamper with the body, and they went and got the police. So her body was found floating face down around kind of the far back end of where she was actually camping. And what this meant was that she couldn't have simply just fallen into the water. So the cove, the area of land that they were staying on, one side 90-foot drop, the other side 45-foot drop. But where she was found, I'll put a picture on, it was more over that side. So even if she had fallen off the 45-foot drop, the current that day was going in the opposite direction, which would have meant that her body would have never ever ended up where they found it. It would have been dragged down to the other end. So because of this, it led some people to believe that Lauren was actually killed and her body was dumped in that area later on. There are actually evidence photos of Lauren's body when she was found floating in the water. Now, out of respect of her and her family, I personally did not want to put them in my video, but if you do want to check them out, they are readily available online. There are also some photos of her injuries, which I will include in this video. Kind of close up, you won't really see anything apart from the injuries, but I just wanted to let you know in case that was something that you did not want to see, because some people may find it disturbing, but like I said, you won't actually see anything but the injuries that she received. So the two policemen, along with the fishermen, were the only four people that were aware of this body, as the two fishermen lead them to the place where they found it. Before they even get to the body, they came across two men in a canoe rowing over to where the body was. Now obviously the police stopped them and told them to remove themselves from this area. And the men actually turned out to be Aaron and Chris. And one of them actually stated, "That could be one of my friends over there." Now the fact that a body had been found had not been circulated. It had not been broadcasted, and the police hadn't even seen the body yet. Only those four people were actually aware that there was a body. So how did they know that a body was there? If they had managed to stumble across it previously, why did they not report it to the police? If they thought Lauren had simply gone to the bar, and like I said, they didn't report her as missing, why would they assume that that body was Lauren's? And why were they actually trying to get there before the police? One officer did report later on that he thought that this encounter was actually staged. Lauren's body was removed and taken for autopsy. And this is where things get even more suspicious. She had suffered blunt force trauma as well as broken fingers, a broken nose, bruising throughout her body and scratches, hemorrhaging on her back and 2 bruises on her thighs. And this is actually believed by the private investigator and her family that these bruises on her thighs could have potentially been caused by somebody kneeling on her legs, forcing her down, not allowing her to actually get up. And there was also a mark on one of her breasts, which people believe is actually a bite mark. Now, with the bruising and the bite mark, people believe that she may have been sexually assaulted. However, this bite mark was not a typical bite mark that you would associate with a sexual assault. For example, the position of the bite mark would have been horizontal, just biting down like normally, but this one was actually vertical, as if somebody had reached over her body, the side of her body, and bitten it that way. And because of this finding, one of the police officers did suggest that a rape kit should be done. However, a rape kit was never done on Lauren Agee's body. In fact, not many tests or swabs or anything like that was actually performed. It's said that the rape kit was not carried out due to the fact that her body was found fully clothed and she actually still had a tampon inserted. And the fact that she had a tampon, the police believed that there was no possible way she could have been raped, which is absolutely absurd. I mean, someone like a rapist would not actually care if she was on her period. And just because the tampon was still inside doesn't mean that she might not have been sexually assaulted. I have found out that Lauren was not even on a period at this time. Now, maybe she had this tampon in place because she was partaking in water sports. Maybe she was due on and just wanted to be better safe than sorry in a sense. Now, there is another theory that this tampon could have been placed as a decoy in a sense, leading the police to come to the decision that they did come to and that Lauren was not raped. And this was made more believable by the clothes she was actually found in were not her own. Sherry, her mother, had never seen these clothes before, and it did kind of appear like she hadn't dressed herself. Now, it could be purely coincidental, but anybody who wears a bra will know that it can be quite uncomfortable if the straps are twisted and things like that. Lauren's bra strap was really twisted, and it was found with only one clasp out of the top clasp out of the 3 done up. Now, personally, I cannot stand the twisted strap, but if I was partaking in water sports, I would have made sure that my bra was secure. For example, the water throws you around and you really don't want your bra coming off, so you would make sure, in my opinion, that the straps were fully done up because of this fact. So like myself, surely Lauren would have fixed her strap and made sure all of the clasps were in place to ensure that her bra actually stayed on during the water sport event. Again, this ties in with the theory that she was sexually assaulted. They could have sexually assaulted her, placed a tampon to make it look like she had not been, dressed her in somebody else's clothes, and not taken too much care when doing up a bra, obviously leaving the strap twisted and the clasp. And this might make it look like she was not actually sexually assaulted, which, if this did happen, did the job, because the police never assumed that she was, and they did not perform a rape kit. They did, however, do a blood test on her, which came back to say that she was twice the legal limit, but obviously this is to be expected. She's at a festival where it's renowned for drinking and lots of alcohol, so this would have been normal. And they did not find any drugs in her system. So all of the injuries she sustained, including what appeared to be a bite mark, could also be consistent with falling from the cliff and hitting rocks and trees and debris as she obviously tumbled down. And the police did not think that there was any foul play involved at all. There was some crushing injuries to her throat. Now, some people believe this could have been caused due to strangulation, but the police did put it down to the fact that she could have hit a rock or something, a tree, with her throat, which could have also caused the crushing injuries. The pathologist actually stated that the crush injury to her throat was not enough to end her life, so this was not even ruled as her cause of death. What do you guys think up to this point? What theories do you think are actually correct? Maybe the strangulation could have been part of a rape if it did actually happen? Or do you believe the pathologists in the fact that they stated she had fallen down from a great height and hit rocks, amongst other things, on the way down, causing these injuries? Obviously, it's for you guys to make your own decision on this. I've just collated the information to enable you to do so. Lauren's official cause of death was drowning. Her death was ruled accidental, and they suspected no foul play. They believe she fell off the cliff whilst drunk, impacted the side possibly numerous occasions as she fell, to which she then suffered blunt force trauma as she entered the water. So one of the main reasons that they do not believe the cause of death was drowning was because her body was found floating. Now, many drowning victims, as they are drowning, they gasp for air, and as they are gasping for air, the water enters their lungs. It fills their lungs, and due to this, they then sink. So their body is found usually having sunk. They generally do not float. Obviously, this does occur in minimal cases, but in the vast majority, the bodies do sink. So why was Lauren's body, if she had drowned, found floating? Now, I have researched this. There is something called dry drowning, but I do not think that this applies to Lauren. So Lauren wasn't gasping for air when she entered the water, which is why her lungs didn't fill up, which suggests to me and many others that she was actually killed before being placed into the water. Like I said, they ruled her cause of death as drowning, so they did think that she was alive when she hit the water. Dry drowning usually happens within children. So a child, generally speaking, would inhale water through their nose or mouth. This then causes a spasm in their airway which blocks the airflow. And it is actually named dry because this closes up due to the spasm. It does not allow any airflow, again, like I said, which does not allow the water to enter your lungs. Again, this generally occurs in children. It does not generally occur in adults. The only time it does occur in adults is if they are in poor health, which Lauren was not. She was healthy. So I do not really think that this would apply to Lauren. Another concerning thing that was found during her autopsy was a mark on her stomach in the shape of a triangle. Now, for this to actually appear on Lauren's skin, she would have had to have been laid on something for quite a significant amount of time. Many people have speculated, including the private investigator, that this mark was made by a canoe. Even one of the investigators have noted that the end of the boy's canoe had a folded metal section in the shape of a triangle, which reportedly did match the shape on Lauren's skin. This leads to the fact that maybe her body was rested on the end of a canoe and then dumped to where it was found. For this to be the case, I would assume that there would have actually had to be 2 people in the canoe, because her body would have been overhanging in the water, and due to the weight distribution, somebody would have probably had to be in the middle and the back to make sure that the canoe didn't tip. This mark was dismissed by the police, having said that the mark was left by the rescue boat which came to remove her body. Now, the family's PI have looked into this, and she has stated that the angles do not match the rescue boat, and the mark on her body does not match the rescue boat either, but it does match the canoe. Lauren's family and private investigator have been up to that campsite numerous occasions. I think around 50 tests have been made with a dummy that was Lauren's height and weight, and they dropped it from numerous places around the cliff to try and get it to where her body was found. They dropped the dummy from the 45-foot drop, and all the times that they did it, none of them ended in the water. It always got struck on trees, rocks. There was just too much in the way for it to actually ever reach the water. And as I said before, if she had fallen from the 90-foot drop, the current, again, was going in the wrong direction and her body would not have ended up there. After the loss of Lauren, her so-called friends just returned to the festival like nothing had ever happened. Yes, you did hear that right. After the death and her body was discovered, they just carried on like normal. They partied, they did what they came there to do, basically, as if they didn't even care. I mean, what on earth? If that doesn't scream suspicious alone, barring everything else, then I don't know what does. Who would do something like that? Many people do believe that this was a homicide, with Aaron Lilly, Hannah Palmer and Christopher Stout as the main suspects. Of course, this wasn't the case in the eye of the law, as her death was ruled as accidental with no foul play. So the first people to be taken in for questioning after the death of Lauren were Aaron and Chris. Now obviously the police had to take the boat and try and get them down from the campsite, and as they came onto the boat there was a lot of suspicious chatter going on. The police reported that they seemed very nervous and they were very unempathetic. Eventually they were all questioned and they all seemed to be very forthcoming with their theories onto what happened to Lauren. Hannah stated that she saw Lauren early hours with a man on a boat and possibly he had something to do with it. Aaron initially told them that Lauren didn't even make it back from the bar that night, which obviously we know is untrue because all of her belongings were left by the hammock. He also told them that he believed she was going to speak to one of her exes that night. Most of this happened while they were in the back of the boat to the mainland, to which the officers said they saw them constantly whispering and acting really nervous. Apparently the police even heard Aaron say, "I'll do all of the talking." When quizzed by an officer as to what they were all thinking about, one of the guys reportedly said, "I'm thinking about how I'm going to get that gun from your hip and get off this boat." If this is actually true, I find this a very strange thing to be said to a police officer of all people. Hannah also changed her story, stating that she thought that maybe Lauren fell while she was going to the toilet. So to actually go to the toilet up on this campsite, they would have to hold on to a specific tree, which was dubbed the toilet area. They would hold onto this tree, they would kind of lean back and go about their business basically. This, however, has been since discounted because the area in which Hannah described as the toilet area, they've chucked dummies over the edge numerous times, and there's kind of a ledge below that the dummy landed on every single time. Now, if Lauren had done this, then she would have ended up on that ledge. Now, she probably would have sustained many injuries, but it wouldn't have been life-threatening. Then obviously that's where she would have been located. She would have not dropped into the water from this location. Chris believed that Lauren had got up during the middle of the night and possibly fell over, but he also stated that he did not feel her get up. This I find very odd. He was in the same hammock as her, and surely he would have felt her get up if she did. I mean, I do know that obviously they were all drunk, but it's still a hammock. It's literally material suspended by 2 straps, and I myself have been in a hammock. Now, it's quite difficult to get in and out of it without it swaying all over the place, which would surely have woken Chris up. And surely if she did fall, somebody would have heard something. The fact that they kept coming up with all these different stories and changing them all the time was very suspicious. Sherry did question why her friends did not report her missing when they realised she was gone. And she also reported that she was contacted by one of the officers who was at the scene that day. He stated that he did think that there was foul play involved in her daughter's case. He relayed the full details of how odd her friend's behaviour was and the chatter that had gone on in the back of the boat, and the facts that they all started giving different stories. And because of this, she requested a re-examination into the case, which was denied. Months after her death, the family wanted to look into this more, so they hired a private investigator, Sheila Wysocki. She spoke to her friend, Cassie Franks, who had tried to report that she was equally disturbed by the circumstances surrounding Lauren Agee's death, and she did attempt to voice her concerns to the police. She informed them that she had previously dated Aaron Lilly, and whilst with him, he was aggressive and violent towards her, and she actually produced photos of her injuries, which included bruises and bite marks. He was actually arrested on charges of domestic violence, where he choked and bit her during an altercation. She also revealed that Chris Stout had a record too. He had been charged for 3 DUIs, including one from fleeing the scene of an accident. So both of these guys had had trouble with the law previously. However, the police still insist that Lauren's death was due to misadventure, and until this day are refusing to investigate further. Another person they actually questioned was Lauren's friend Jade. Now, Lauren had been sending texts to Jade throughout that night. She told her that she wasn't having fun and wanted to go home. She asked Jade if she could actually pick her up. Now, Jade understandably refused. It was pitch black outside, it was very late, and she didn't even know where this festival was. Lauren actually asked multiple people to take her home that night. And as I stated earlier, Lauren was even contemplating driving herself home whilst under the influence. That was how much he didn't want to be there that night. But why? She obviously had gone to have fun, enjoy herself with a friend. Why, if they were not being mean to her, etc., did she suddenly not want to be there? I do believe that there was something really wrong going on at this festival, and that her so-called friends definitely had something to do with it. And they obviously made her feel very unwelcome there, due to the fact that she really wanted to leave so desperately. Like I said, her friends carried on like normal, enjoying the rest of the festival for the next 2 days, partying, drinking, just basically acting like nothing had happened. And when they returned home, Chris posted on social media, stating, "Best weekend ever." This I just seriously don't understand. Somebody actually died. Somebody he was spending his time there with. He didn't know Lauren all that well, but even if he didn't, even probably some people who didn't actually know Lauren at all were probably affected by her death, because it is a horrible thing to happen. You don't just carry on and party like nothing had happened and then post on social media, "Best weekend ever." That's just insane. Sherry actually saw this post, and Chris did actually alter it to something different. He changed it to Wakefest 2015. Went pretty good this year. Met some new friends and made it awesome. Now, the death of somebody who was in the group was pretty good. I just don't understand that at all. Very, very suspicious in my eyes. And not one of them actually went to her funeral. Like I said, Hannah was her friend. She wasn't the most reliable friend, but you would have expected at least her to go to the funeral. But none of them did. At this moment in time, Lauren Agee's case is believed to be closed. They believe that she'd fallen from the ledge that night and drowned in the water below. Her family and many other people do not believe this. They've even done a petition to reopen the case, which I believe was closed down after it came up just short. Obviously, I do believe that Sherry will not give up and keep trying to reopen her daughter's case, which I personally do believe should happen. I do believe that it was ruled accidental far too quickly. They didn't even really look into any other options what it could have been. They never did a rape test or swabs or anything like that. They just said, no, she fell from the cliff and she drowned, and that's it. There was no foul play. Aaron and Chris and Hannah were acting super suspiciously, but this wasn't even taken into account. They just said, no, accidental, that's it. I do suspect foul play, and I do believe that her friends had something to do with it. Now, there are a few options, obviously. There's the rape theory, that she was strangled and raped. Whether they had fought over something like sleeping arrangements and Lauren was killed in the altercation. Whether they didn't really have a motive and just killed her anyway and then dumped her body, or whether it was actually a genuine accident. Maybe she died due to alcohol and in a panic they disposed of her body. This theory, however, doesn't really correlate to how much scrapes and bruises and injuries she had on her body, unless she was that paralytic that she'd stumbled around and fallen over on the cliffside and then obviously died due to the alcohol. I do not really believe that Lauren fell over the edge that night and actually drowned in the water. Like I said, the dummy tests and things like that, and how suspicious her friends were acting, just don't correlate to me. I do believe that at the very least her friends had something to do with moving her body, because the fact that the body ended up where it did does not correlate to where her campsite was. And the pattern on her skin, that correlates to the end of a canoe. pretty much solidifies it for me. I would love to hear what your guys' theories are on what happened that night and how Lauren actually came to lose her life on that fateful day. Please let me know in the comments below what you guys think. But anyway guys, that's all I have on the case of Lauren Agee today. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye!